Welcome to The Explainer. So, did you know that in Victorian architecture, those endless hallways and weirdly windowless rooms were often seen as physical manifestations of the era's repressed psychology? It's fascinating, right? Well, today we're diving into a genuinely terrifying exploration of a narrative where a Victorian mansion at the end of Blackthorne Lane doesn't just happen to harbor ghosts, but actively functions as a predator. We're unpacking the incredibly chilling source material of The Walls That Remember. Throughout this explainer, we're going to see how architectural decay and supernatural horror are used as metaphors for something deeply human, the heavy, absolute crushing weight of grief.
To really set the scene for you, our source text introduces us to Elena. She arrives at this rotting, totally silent house carrying some profound trauma. Her mother has recently passed away, and her father has just disappeared into alcoholism. She is completely alone, completely exhausted, and desperately hoping for a fresh start in this house she inherited from her late aunt. But instead of a quiet refuge, the house greets her with a sound. Not a scream, but the soft, echoing crying of someone who has already lost all hope.
Part 1. The House on Blackthorne Lane, a Foundation of Grief. Right away, we see that the local town avoids this place like the plague. Even the taxi driver who drops Elena off absolutely refuses to look at the building. He gives her this incredibly ominous warning that cheap things usually cost more later, hinting at some dark whispers about Elena's aunt. Officially, her aunt's cause of death was a heart attack, but unofficially, well, the town knows better. So, the really crucial point here is that Elena's emotional vulnerability, her profound grief, makes her the absolute perfect target. In this lore, grief isn't just a sad emotion, it's literally the primary fuel that awakens the sinister forces lurking in the house.
Part 2. Whispers Inside the Walls. The Escalation of Terror. Let's move to our very first night.
This part brilliantly illustrates the methodical escalation of the haunting. The entity doesn't just attack her out of nowhere. It slowly breaks down Elena's psychological state. First, there's just the soft, distant crying of a little girl. Then it escalates to scratching from inside the wall right beside her bed. And we're talking scratching so intense it leaves deep, fresh marks that expose the wood beneath the paint. Finally, it builds to a slow, deliberate knocking. It's this incredibly calculated, predatory progression designed to maximize her fear.
Naturally, Elena tries to convince herself it's just rats or old settling pipes. We'd all do that, right? But a quick trip to the local grocery store shatters any illusion of safety. The townspeople just stop and stare at her. The whole room goes dead silent. And then this old woman tightly grabs Elena's wrist and delivers a bone-chilling warning. That house eats people. She explicitly warns Elena that if she hears knocking from inside the walls, she must never, ever answer it.
But of course, as the text reveals, those terrifying 3 knocks arrive that very night. When Elena makes the absolutely huge mistake of pressing her ear to the wall to listen to the crying girl, the entity breaches her physical space. A voice whispers right behind her ear, "You shouldn't have done that." And this culminates in the appearance of an impossibly tall figure at the end of her hallway. Its head is nearly touching the ceiling, its arms are unnaturally long, and its face is just pure darkness. It sprints at her, crashing violently into our bedroom door, proving that this threat is incredibly physically real.
Part 3. Victor's Gruesome Secret, Uncovering the Dark History.
Desperate for answers, Elena searches the house the next morning and uncovers a hidden, windowless room completely concealed beneath the basement stairs. Inside this claustrophobic, pitch-black space, the walls are plastered with hundreds of disturbing children's drawings of a tall black figure. This is where she finds her aunt's final diary entry, which contains a terrifying realization. It says the entity feeds on lonely people and wears grief like skin. And the most horrifying detail of all, the aunt's final shaky sentence warns that the entity wants Elena next.
Digging into the old newspaper records reveals a deeply disturbing timeline. You see, 30 years ago, Victor Hale wasn't just some monster hiding in the dark. He was a respected doctor, genuinely loved by the town. But as children began mysteriously disappearing, police eventually found a hidden room filled with bones inside his walls. Victor claimed the house itself spoke to him and demanded to be fed. But before he could be arrested, he vanished entirely, seemingly physically merging with the darkness of the house itself.
The horror really peaks when Elena goes back down to the basement. She encounters the spirit of a black-eyed little girl who warns her he wants you too. And then Victor finally reveals his true form. He is impossibly tall, rotting, with his skin stretched incorrectly across his body. His jaw hangs open so wide it defies anatomy, and inside his mouth the voices of screaming children echo out. He taunts Elena with a horrific truth. She can hear the trapped spirits because her own profound grief means she belongs with them.
Part 4. The house comes alive. A symphony of chaos. This brings us right to the climax of the narrative.
The house totally drops all illusions and weaponizes itself. The chaos is absolute. We're talking doors slamming shut and locking on their own, windows completely shattering and lights exploding one by one. The walls actually begin to bleed this thick black liquid. As Elena desperately tries to run, the hallways stretch out, doors appear out of nowhere, the ceiling starts pulsing like human flesh, and endless children's hands reach out from the cracking walls, just begging for help. It is a total nightmare scenario.
In a devastating psychological blow, the house uses Elena's specific trauma to break her spirit completely. She opens a door and finds a vision of her dead, crying mother. But as she watches, her mother's face literally melts apart and Victor crawls out from inside her mouth. He delivers this absolute gut punch of a line. "You were already empty when you arrived. I only finished the job." He's confirming that he didn't even need to break her. He just needed to consume the immense sorrow she already brought with her. Part 5, Fire and Ash, Confronting the Pain.
Trapped and broken, Elena faces her final test. But instead of just surrendering to the sorrow, she remembers the absolutely crucial warning from her aunt's diary. She realizes a profound truth about the mechanics of this supernatural threat. If the entity fundamentally relies on her pain, her loneliness, and her fear to survive, she must take away its power by flat-out refusing to be afraid. We see a total game-changing shift in her character right here. She transforms from this paralyzed, helpless victim consumed by fear into a fierce, empowered survivor. She decides that if the house feeds on pain, she is going to destroy it. She rushes to the garage, grabs a can of gasoline, and begins pouring it all across the basement floor. With tears rolling down her face, she declares, "I'm not afraid anymore," and just drops the match. The results are instantaneous and catastrophic. Flames explode through the basement. Victor shrieks with the dying voices of hundreds of victims. The very walls of the house split open to reveal screaming, burning faces. But amidst all that black smoke and destruction, something beautiful happens. The trapped children walk free out into the rain. The little girl looks at Elena with human eyes, whispers a quiet thank you, and vanishes into ash as the house completely collapses.
You'd think it ends there, right? However, our story doesn't wrap up quite so neatly. The narrative jumps forward 3 months later to a clearing crew working in the muddy, charred ruins of Blackthorne Hollow.
Digging through the ashes, the workers uncover something impossible. A single, perfectly intact wall, standing completely untouched by the massive inferno. And then, from deep within the wood, comes that familiar sound. 3 slow knocks, followed by the chilling, soft whisper of a little girl pleading for help. The cycle, it seems, is beginning all over again. It leaves us with one terrifying, lingering realization. You can burn down the walls, sure, but can you ever truly destroy what lives inside sorrow? It's a heavy question. I highly recommend checking out the source text to uncover even more of these chilling details. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and always keep questioning what hides inside the walls.